There's an invisible line many mothers cross without even noticing, the line between loving and losing themselves. They do it with the best intentions, with open hearts, with hands always ready to give. But there comes a moment when that unconditional devotion stops being love and starts becoming loss. Loss of energy, of dignity, of self-respect. Few things hurt more than watching your child fall, except knowing you pushed them a little further down by shielding them from every blow. Because yes, helping can also be a way of hurting, even if we don't see it that way. No one teaches you when to stop, when to say, "This is as far as I go." But that moment exists, and postponing it only traps you in a cycle of guilt, exhaustion, and silence. Today we're going to explore 9 situations where not helping isn't just valid, it's necessary. 9 moments when your peace matters more than any self-sacrificing gesture. The last of these situations might completely change the way you understand love in adulthood. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Stay with me until the end. Because at this stage in life, knowing when to stop is also a form of love. Have you ever felt that your love became an obstacle to your child's growth? I'm not talking about spoiling them when they were little or shielding them from responsibilities when they were just learning to walk. I'm talking about now that they're adults, now that they can and should carry the weight of their own choices. But you still feel like you have to save them because you see them suffering, because their pain hurts you too, because the thought of standing by while they sink is unbearable. But take a moment and think, what if that suffering is exactly what they need to wake up? This is the first point in the video, and perhaps the hardest to accept. You shouldn't help your child when their pain is the result of their own decisions. Because when you do, when you try to lift the burden of something they created themselves, you're not being compassionate. You're interfering with their process. You're interrupting the only school that truly teaches. Life itself. Pain, even when it hurts you too, is a teacher, and it can't be interrupted without consequences. Picture a field after a long drought. The ground is cracked, hard, lifeless. A farmer knows that if he plants seeds without waiting for the rain, without giving the land time, he'll only lose the crop. But he also knows something else. When the first drops fall, he can't rush in and stir everything up. He can't speed up the process. He has to wait, observe. Trust that the water and the soil will do what they need to do. That's how it is with your child too. If they made poor choices, ignored advice, repeated mistakes despite your warnings, their field is dry by their own doing. You can't plant solutions for someone who hasn't yet faced the drought they created. Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we hold about them." And in this case, what's keeping you from letting go isn't love. It's the belief that if you don't step in, you're failing as a mother. But that belief is false. Sometimes truly loving means stepping back. It means watching from afar, with your heart in knots, but with the conviction that every fall is a stepping stone. Not for you, for them. I've heard heartbreaking stories. Mothers pawning what little they have to pay off debts they didn't incur, sacrificing their health to raise grandchildren that aren't their responsibility, staying silent through disrespect just to keep a bond that's already broken. And they all say the same thing: "He's my son. I can't leave him alone." But what kind of company is that, if all it does is prolong his blindness? Mature love doesn't infantilize. It doesn't shield from truth. It doesn't block the lesson. And if your child has arrived at this point through their own choices, what they need isn't your rescue. It's your firm distance. Your silence filled with presence. Your prayer, if you believe in God, but not your solution. Because every time you save them, you're silently telling them they can't do it alone. And the worst part is, they start to believe it. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Look at your story and theirs. How many times did you help out of fear, not conviction? How many times did you hold them up, knowing it would keep them from learning to walk? This is the moment to reclaim your peace, not to abandon them, but to let them face what they've sown. Because only then will they understand one day the true meaning of love that's not given with hands, but with a still soul. The kind that, like rain on a field, comes when it's meant to, and not before. In the previous reflection, we talked about that silent urge many mothers feel to rescue their children, even when those children are the ones who caused their own downfall. But there's a trap even more dangerous, one that disguises itself as generosity, understanding, and presence. We've now arrived at the second key point in this video. You should not help your child when they ask for help without having made the slightest effort. We're not talking about tragedies or truly impossible situations here. We're talking about a pattern you know all too well. Your child comes to you, tells you about a problem, moves you, maybe even cries, talks about how hard everything is. But deep down, you know they haven't done a single thing to change their situation. No phone calls, no research, not even a real attempt to solve it. They just show up when it's all spiraled out of control, expecting you to fix what they haven't even begun to face. The root of this problem isn't always malice or laziness. Often, what's behind it is a deeply ingrained habit, a script repeated since childhood where they ask and you respond, where they get tangled and you untangle, where they freeze and you move for them. But that habit, even if it was born out of love, eventually becomes a subtle form of violence against yourself. Because every time you respond to their inaction, you're draining yourself, not to save them, but to avoid the emptiness you'd feel if you dared to say, "Not this time." Stoicism reminds us that we can't control the actions of others, only our own. And here, you face a profound choice. You can keep putting out fires you didn't start, or you can begin to set boundaries that are also a form of teaching. Seneca said that those who never have to learn to manage their own discomfort will never learn to live in peace. And how does someone learn that? By realizing no one is coming to save them. That there are roads you have to walk with your own feet. From a spiritual perspective, this carries even more weight. If you believe that every human being has a mission, a purpose, a growing consciousness, then you must also accept that interrupting that process is an act of distrust in the divine. When you do for your child what they must do for themselves, you don't just limit them. You rob them of the chance to discover their inner strength, to fall to their knees, cry out for help, and in that cry, find something you could never give them. And the consequences run deep. The more you intervene, the further your child drifts from emotional maturity. They settle into complaint, into waiting, into dependence. And you, meanwhile, fade into a blur of favors, loans, caretaking, and tasks that aren't yours. It's not just your resources that wear thin, your health, your energy, your sense of fairness begin to erode too. And there comes an inevitable point when you start to wonder if you'll ever be seen for who you are, not just for what you give. Old age is not meant for holding up the unholdable. It's meant for reconnecting with what matters, what remains after you've given so much. Helping someone who isn't even trying isn't nobility, it's self-abandonment. And that abandonment doesn't just drain your days, it poisons your relationship with them, because resentment builds up even if you don't say it, even if you smile, even if you say it doesn't matter. It does matter, and you know it. Today, I invite you to look with clarity. What is your child doing for themselves before coming to you? What signs show you they're truly ready to grow? Because if there's no action, no effort, then it's not a request for help. It's a demand in disguise. And you're not here to meet demands. You're here to live with dignity and serenity. If you choose to wait until they've done their part before stepping in, you're not abandoning them. You're showing them, perhaps for the first time, that their life belongs to them. And that, even if it hurts at first, is the greatest act of respect you can offer. There's a kind of help that's even more dangerous, the kind that comes when he knows exactly what to say to make you give in. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things really start to shift. You should not help your child when they use guilt as a tool for manipulation. Guilt is one of the most powerful and at the same time, most destructive emotions you can carry. Especially when it comes from a long history, from years when you felt you didn't give enough or made mistakes as a parent, or life overwhelmed you and your children paid part of the price. That guilt, when left untransformed, becomes a key, and your child knows it. They know how to use it. They know what tone to take, what memories to bring up, what words to say to make you feel like you have no right to say no. And if you don't set a boundary there, you'll spend the rest of your life paying off a debt that no longer belongs to you. Seneca said that a free soul is one that doesn't get dragged around by destructive passions. And guilt, when it becomes chronic, is exactly that, a destructive passion. It doesn't guide you toward healing or love. It leads you into repetition, into a cycle of actions not born from a desire to give, but from fear of not being loved. Here's a strategy I want to offer. Every time you feel guilty for saying no, take a deep breath and quietly ask yourself, am I choosing from love or from fear? If the answer is fear, stop. Don't make decisions in that state. The calm that comes from true love never demands, never forces. It simply flows. And if it doesn't flow, it's not yours to carry. This strategy works because it breaks the pattern. It forces us to pause and reflect before acting. It's a sacred pause that interrupts the chain of automatic sacrifice. And spiritually, it carries even more weight. You didn't come into this world to be someone's emotional servant. Your soul wasn't created to crawl under the gaze of a child who learned to use your love as leverage for their own ends. You were created to live in peace, to be a light, even if that means shining from a distance. Think of a candle that's always burning for others. At first, it warms, it lights the way, it gives life. But if you never protect it, if you never tend to its base, it burns out quickly. That's what happens to you when you help out of guilt. You wear yourself down. And the worst part is that exhaustion goes unseen and unappreciated. More is just expected. That's why the moment you start making decisions from clarity instead of fear is also the moment you reclaim your self-respect. And that respect is non-negotiable. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt guilt pushed you to give more than you could, share it in the comments with the phrase, "My peace is not for sale." There are still powerful lessons ahead, and believe me when I say the final one will be key to breaking these patterns for good. Stay with me. This journey is just beginning. In the previous point, we talked about guilt as a quiet form of manipulation, the kind that pushes you to give even when you've got nothing left, just to feel like you're still a good mother. But there's a deeper, more subtle dynamic that becomes an almost invisible trap when it turns into a way of life. And now it's time to talk about it. This is the fourth point in the video. You should not help your child when their life is a constant pattern of chaos. This isn't about a one-time stumble, a tough year, or a difficult phase. We're talking about a repeated cycle, a sequence you know by heart. Crisis, help, promises, brief calm, and then the same fall all over again. It's a spiral. And the most dangerous part is that over time, you get used to living inside that spiral, as if it were your fate. Every time your child comes back with a new emergency, you react the same way. You run, you give in, you fix things, you burn out. What once looked like love starts to feel more like a punishment you're inflicting on yourself. Without realizing it, you become the backbone of someone else's chaos, as if your life was meant to revolve around putting out fires you didn't start. Why does this happen? Because your child's chaos becomes normalized, and you, afraid of watching them fall even further, become part of this rescue routine. But that routine doesn't save, it traps. And the biggest mistake is believing that just because you're the mother, you have to endure everything. No, you're his mother, yes, but you're also a woman, a person with limits, with dignity, with the right not to live inside someone else's disorder. Stoicism teaches us that each person is the guardian of their own inner temple, and letting someone else walk in with muddy feet again and again isn't charity, it's negligence toward yourself. When you're surrounded by someone else's chaos, your mind becomes clouded, your energy drains, your body suffers. Because the soul isn't made to stay on high alert 24/7 for problems that don't come from you, but from someone else's immaturity, irresponsibility, or constant confusion. This pattern settles into your identity. You start to see yourself as the one who always fixes things, the one who stays when everyone else leaves. And while that might seem noble, it turns into a prison, because someone else's chaos becomes the rhythm of your life. You forget what it's like to have a peaceful day, a conversation that isn't about holding back tears, a night free of mental interruptions over debts, messes, or failures that aren't yours to carry. That's not living. And even if you love him with all your heart, even if you've been there from day one, you still have the right to stop. The big trap is believing that if you stop helping, everything will fall apart. But what you don't see is that the collapse doesn't belong to you. It's part of the path he has to walk, and the more you interfere, the more you delay it. True help sometimes means stepping back with firmness. It means saying, "I'm here, but not to hold up what can't be held." That phrase, as hard as it is to say, can be the turning point between staying trapped in someone else's chaos or beginning to build your own peace, your own order, your new life. If your child's disorder has become the center of your routine, it's time to look at it differently, not as something you must fix, but as a sign that something in you needs care too. You're not here to perpetuate chaos, you're here to reclaim your serenity, that serenity that is yours by right, even if no one else acknowledges it, even if you have to fight for it quietly, day by day. Because when you choose to step out of the chaos, even if the world stays the same, something inside you begins to straighten. And that inner alignment is the first step toward a clearer, stronger, more truly yours life. If you've made it this far, you're already starting to see how certain patterns, though they may look like acts of love, end up erasing you. But there's an even subtler kind of wear and tear, one that happens so often it begins to feel normal. The fifth point in this video is this: you should not help your child when their crisis is the result of ignored warnings. You know exactly what I mean. You saw it coming. You said it. You warned them, once, twice, 10 times. Sometimes with gentle words, sometimes through tears, other times with firmness. But they didn't listen, or they heard you, but chose not to act. And when the consequences of that choice came crashing down, they came back to you. Not with humility, not with a deep desire to make things right. They came back with urgency, with demands, with the same old script, "Help me." And you, even though exhausted, reached out again. Because that's how you were raised, because that's what you were taught it means to be a mother, because some part of you still believes that just one more act of help will change everything. But it doesn't, it just repeats. Staying stuck in this pattern comes with consequences, ones you may already be feeling. First comes the deep frustration, that sense of being trapped in a cycle that never ends. You give, but you don't receive. You warn, but you're not heard. You try to protect, but your words are ignored. It's a form of devaluation disguised as connection. But at its core, it just reinforces an unfair dynamic. You wear yourself out while he makes excuses. You carry the weight while he forgets. And little by little, you lose parts of yourself in every repeat. Your energy fades, your hope fades, your sense of respect fades. And something else is lost too: the chance at a mature relationship. Because when you allow him to ignore your warnings and then expect you to clean up the mess, you're teaching him that your words don't matter. And if your words don't matter, neither do you in his emotional world. You become useful but not valued, present but not heard, close but not respected. And that loss of respect is more painful than any offense, because it makes you invisible right where you most wanted to be seen. Can this be reversed? Yes, but not with empty words or promises of sudden change. It begins when you decide to stop repeating the pattern, when you choose that an ignored warning now comes with real consequences. Not punishment, not indifference, but meaningful distance. Space for him to finally see what you've been seeing all along. And that only comes with a new mindset. That of a woman who no longer begs to be heard, who no longer pleads to be acknowledged. A woman who knows her worth and understands that respect isn't asked for, it's embodied. This kind of change isn't comfortable. You'll feel afraid. You'll doubt yourself. You'll hear that voice inside whispering, "What if this time he does change?" Or, "What if this time he really listens?" But that voice doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from tired hope. And hope, when it's no longer rooted in reality, only serves to prolong your suffering. What you need now isn't blind hope, it's steady clarity. See the facts, recognize the pattern, and decide that you weren't brought into this world to repeat endless warnings that fall on deaf ears. Stopping your help at this point isn't revenge. It's an act of self-respect. It's saying through your actions, "I told you. You saw it. Now it's yours to carry." That message, even if unspoken, should live in your eyes, your posture, your silence. Because when you take that stance, something shifts in the relationship. At first, he may lash out, blame you, call you cold. But time, that stoic ally, will reveal what you already know, that those who warn with love and step back with firmness are still teaching. And sometimes that lesson is the only thing left when everything else has been ignored. If in the previous point we talked about ignored warnings and the weight of repeating yourself until you become invisible, now we need to face an even more uncomfortable truth. Sometimes helping isn't just useless, it's deeply destructive to you. We're at the 6th point of this video, and this is the line you must never cross. You should not help your child when what they're asking for compromises your health, your finances, or your peace of mind. Take a moment and do this exercise. Imagine waking up one morning, and the first thing you feel isn't just physical fatigue, it's an existential kind of exhaustion. Your back hurts, your soul hurts, and you know why. Because once again, someone you've given everything to is back at your door, demands wrapped in the disguise of need. There's no thank you, no awareness of what you've sacrificed, just another request. Once again, you're expected to fix it. Once again, your body, your wallet, or your rest has to be on the line for someone who should no longer need that from you. And while he continues on without consequence, you lose years, energy, and your inner stillness. Now look back. How many times did you postpone a doctor's appointment, a personal project, a quiet afternoon because he needed you? How many times did you not buy something for yourself because of his debt, his problem, his emergency that wasn't yours but became yours anyway? That's not love, that's self-abandonment. And when self-abandonment becomes routine, it opens the door to something far more dangerous: resentment. Because what starts as giving turns into silent rage, into tears behind closed doors, into that phrase that echoes in your mind, but never leaves your lips. I'm tired of always being the one who gives everything. This is one of the cruelest traps of misunderstood motherhood. Believing that to be a good mother, you have to sacrifice without limit, even if it means getting sick, going into debt, or living without peace. But that's not true. A dignified mother isn't the one who gives it all away. She's the one who knows when to stop. And if what you're being asked for now puts at risk the little you have left, saying no isn't harshness. It's survival. Old age should not be the space where you feel stripped of what remains. It's a time to harvest respect, to live lightly, to finally have a space of your own. And if every time you try to build that space, someone shows up to tear it down with their demands, then you're not living your life, you're surviving someone else's, and that eventually comes at a cost. The loneliness you feel doesn't always come from being alone. It often comes from realizing that those around you only show up when they need something. And that kind of relationship, repeated over time, doesn't just hurt, it destroys. Because every time you give up your peace out of fear of saying no, something in you breaks. And that break, even if you deny it, shows in your eyes, in your voice, in the way you walk through a quiet house after giving in once again. Today, I want you to see it clearly. Your health is not a bargaining chip. Your money is not an early inheritance. Your peace is not for sale. If you help, let it be from fullness, not from depletion. If you give, let it be because you can, not because you're dragged into it. And if you choose not to, don't let your voice shake. Because that no is also an act of love. Love for yourself, love for the woman you were, the one you are, and the one you can still become, if you allow yourself to live without carrying what doesn't belong to you. What's at stake here isn't just your peace today. It's your chance to age with dignity, to look at your life with respect, and to know that you can still be the center of your own life, not a shadow in someone else's. After talking about everything you lose when you give away your health, your money, or your peace in the name of misunderstood help, there's something else we need to face with complete honesty, something we often don't want to see because it means accepting that for years we've been holding on to an illusion. We've reached the 7th point of this video, and it's one of the hardest to face. You should not help your child when you're using that help as a way to stay present in their life. Maybe this feels familiar. Maybe you don't say it out loud, but deep down, you know it's there. That feeling that if you stop helping, you'll disappear. That if you're no longer available, no longer solving things, if you have nothing to offer, then you'll no longer be part of their life. And that thought tears you apart. Because after all these years, after everything you've given, the fear of being forgotten becomes a hollow space in your chest. And from that emptiness, every request from them feels like a chance to stay connected, even if it hurts, even if it drains you, even if it humiliates you, because worse than being used is not being seen at all. And you know that all too well. But here's the truth you can't keep ignoring. If your presence in your child's life depends on what you give, then there's no real bond, only usefulness. And if you have to sacrifice yourself to be noticed, that's not love. It's emotional dependency, where you become a slave to the attention you're missing. That's not love, that's fear. Fear of being left out. Fear that the phone will stop ringing. Fear that no one will ask about you if you have nothing to offer. And that fear, if left unspoken, will eat you alive. Seneca said, "There's no greater slavery than that of a soul dependent on the recognition of others." And sometimes, painful as it is to admit, we keep helping not because they truly need us, but because we don't know who we are without that role. Because the identity of the self-sacrificing mother has become so deeply ingrained that we don't know ourselves without it. But here's the hardest part. If you're helping just to feel needed, then you're also using your child to fill your own emptiness. They're not the only one taking advantage. You are too, in a different way, and that needs to be said plainly, because only from that truth can real transformation begin. Life doesn't owe you presents. No one owes you love in return for what you've given, and you don't have to keep giving everything just to exist. If your child only calls when they need something, they don't respect you. If they only show up when there's a favor involved, they don't value you. And that's a wound you need to look at head on, not to feel sorry for yourself, but to stop justifying the unjustifiable. The time to transform is now. No more excuses. No more, this is just how I am. No more, if I don't do it, who will? You're not here to carry guilt or beg for affection. You're here to live what remains of your life with dignity. And that's only possible when you choose to be part of someone's life, not because of what you give, but because of who you are. When you understand that you deserve love, even if you're not fixing everything, even if you don't lend money, even if you're not available 24/7. Because if they can't love you from that place, then it's not love, and it's time to stop building your identity on that false ground. You weren't born to be a spectator in your own disappearance. You were born to leave a real mark, to take up space with confidence, to say, with your presence, your voice, and your gaze, I'm here, even if I no longer give like I used to. I'm here because I exist. That kind of presence is the only one that truly matters. Everything else, sooner or later, will fall away, because relationships based on need are fragile, but those built on respect never die. And you deserve, even in this final stage of life, to start living from that place of respect. From that center, you only find when you stop asking permission to exist. If the previous point forced you to face the possibility that you've been helping just to feel needed, now it's time to go even further. Because when you become aware that you're giving away your time, your energy, and your peace to a child who doesn't always appreciate it, a new question arises. What about you? What are you doing with the life you still have? We've reached the 8th point in this video, and it's time to face a truth that may hurt, but can also set you free. You should not help your child when doing so takes you further away from your own life. We're not talking about big decisions or dramatic changes here. We're talking about the everyday things, that project you keep postponing because there are other priorities. That walk you don't take because your son might stop by any minute. That quiet moment you give up because his drama once again takes over the house. Every time you choose someone else's urgency over your own deep desire, you drift further from yourself. And that distance over time becomes emptiness, becomes resentment, becomes a quiet sadness that settles in your chest and you don't know how to name. Because it's not just that you help too much, it's that you've stopped living your life to live his. There's one concrete action you can take starting today. No permission needed, no waiting for him to change. Start choosing yourself. One decision each day. One that gives you back your time, your space, your attention. One that says, today I'm not fixing anyone's life. Today I'm showing up for me. And you don't need to justify it. You don't need to explain that you're tired or that you've already given too much. It's enough just to do it. Because if you wait for someone else to give you your place back, you'll be waiting forever. But to hold this decision, you'll need more than willpower. You'll need a clear mindset. The certainty that you didn't come to this stage of life to be an extension of someone else's chaos. The conviction that you can live without guilt, without explaining yourself, without fear that love will vanish if you're no longer always available. And most of all, you'll need the strength to withstand the noise that will come when you start to change. Because yes, they will complain. They'll say you've changed, that you're not the same. And it's true, you're not. Because you finally decided to be present in your own life, not just in everyone else's. This step is uncomfortable. You won't get applause or instant recognition, But you'll find something else: dignity. And that dignity doesn't depend on what your children say. It depends on you, on your ability to make conscious decisions, even the painful ones, on your courage to hold your ground when they show up with the same stories, the same requests. Because real change isn't an idea, it's a practice. And if you don't live it today, if you don't take the first step now, then you'll keep waiting for something outside to change what only you can transform. You can start today. Not tomorrow, not when things are clearer, not when they finally understand you. Today. Choose something that belongs to you, something that brings you back to yourself. Because as long as your life revolves around solving someone else's, you're not living, you're surviving. And the life that remains, however much or little it may be, does not deserve to be wasted in a role you've already fulfilled. Now it's your turn. Not as a consolation, but as a decision. Not as a last resort, but as an act of power. Because only then will you discover that what's left to live can still be deeply yours, if you dare to take it. After encouraging you to start choosing yourself, even if that means making others uncomfortable or disappointing those who've come to expect your constant availability, it's time to go to the hardest core of this journey, facing the most uncomfortable truth. Because many times, even when you see things clearly, even when you know you deserve to live your own life and not someone else's, something inside still holds you back. You know it, but you don't act. You feel it, but you don't decide. We've reached the 9th point in this video, and there's no turning back now. You should not help your child when love becomes emotional slavery. This point is the most delicate because it touches the heart of your identity. For decades, you've been the one who's always there, the one who holds everything together, the one who never fails. Letting go of that role feels like a small internal death, a farewell to a version of you that, even though it hurt, made you feel alive. But here's the truth no one says out loud. If he can only be okay while you're not, that's not love, it's submission. And if you allow it, if you keep postponing your own freedom because he's my son, then you're also taking part in your own imprisonment. The excuses are many, and all of them sound reasonable. I don't want him to think I don't love him. If I don't help, who will? Maybe this time he'll finally change. But those thoughts don't come from your wisdom. They come from your fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing the illusion that you still matter. Fear of not knowing what to do with the silence that comes when no one needs anything from you. And that fear, if you let it, can last the rest of your life. Because as long as you believe your worth lies in being useful, you'll keep giving yourself to a dynamic that only consumes you. The biggest self-deception is this: believing that putting up with everything is a form of love. It's not. Love doesn't demand endless sacrifice. It doesn't ask you to stay silent in the face of disrespect. It doesn't feed off your exhaustion. If your son only shows up when he needs something, if he doesn't listen when you speak from the heart, if he ignores the wear on your body and disrespects your boundaries, then you're not in a relationship. You're in an emotional chain that you helped build. And now, painful as it is, it's time to break it. But breaking it doesn't mean fighting. It doesn't mean yelling. It doesn't mean blaming. It means something far stronger. It means stopping the defense of what can no longer be defended. It means no longer explaining yourself, no longer waiting for him to change. It means making a quiet, firm, irreversible decision, one that says, "My peace is no longer for sale." That phrase, when turned into action, changes your entire energy, not because he understands it, but because you finally take your rightful place in your own life. Not as a victim, not as a martyr, but as an adult woman who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Today, you can keep saying you do it out of love, or you can accept that real love begins when you see yourself. And to reach that place, you first have to let go of what no longer holds you up. You're not alone. You have yourself. And that, though it may seem like little, is the beginning of your true freedom. A freedom no one else can give you, because only you can choose it, and no one will do it for you. If you've made it this far, you're not looking for comfort, you're looking for truth. And truth doesn't always soothe. Sometimes it hits hard. Sometimes it shatters everything you thought love was, everything you repeated out of habit, everything you gave without asking if you still had anything left to give. But that shake-up is necessary, because if life has taught us anything after 55, it's that the decisions we don't make out of self-respect eventually make themselves, for a much higher price. Today, you've heard 9 moments when you should not help your child, even if it hurts. 9 wake-up calls to look yourself in the eye, to recognize that you're no longer here to keep putting yourself last. Love isn't measured in endless sacrifice. It's measured in respect, in boundaries, in clear, conscious presence. And if someone can't accept that, they're not loving you, they're using you. Very few people make it to the end of content like this because it's not easy to keep your eyes open when the mirror doesn't lie. But you did, and that deserves recognition, not flattery, but truth. You've taken a step most people avoid their entire lives. So if this video resonated with you, if something inside you clicked, I invite you to write in the comments, "I won't abandon myself anymore," and tell me which country you're watching from. That phrase isn't a slogan, it's a commitment to yourself. It's a signal that you're ready to stop carrying what no longer belongs to you and start living with more clarity, more peace, more strength. My name is Gabriel, and this space is called the Stoic Garden. We're not here to entertain or to soften the path, we're here to wake up, to stand beside those who no longer want to live numb from guilt, exhaustion, or fear of being alone. This channel exists because too many women like you have been made invisible, manipulated, or pushed aside after giving everything. And it's time they reclaim their center, their voice, their right to exist without begging for love. If you felt this message helped you see things more clearly, I ask you to subscribe and be part of this community. We don't offer easy answers here, but we do offer the chance to reflect, to shake free, to grow. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, even if they don't know how to ask. Because sometimes, one phrase is all it takes to change the course of a life. And if you want to keep going deeper, don't go just yet. 2 more videos will appear on screen that can help you strengthen this decision. Because this journey doesn't end here. It's only the beginning of a life where love is no longer confused with sacrifice, and where your peace is no longer in anyone else's hands. I'll see you in the next one.